Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-bits on Business and Finance with me. An All India survey was conducted for an NGO called Save Life Foundation, and this survey was conducted on truck drivers. Over 1300 truck drivers all over the country were questioned about the activity of truck driving that they are engaged in, their livelihood, their future, their welfare, the ecosystem in which they operate. And the findings of the survey, if you ask us, are disturbing and shameful too. And what were the findings? The first one, truck drivers said that they get a paltry salary. They said that despite putting in 12 hours of back-breaking work, they are paid just between 10 to 20,000 rupees a month, which very often is even below the minimum wages set by the government of India. They said that despite them not liking what they do, they are not able to shift to any other activity for sheer lack of jobs. And in this entire activity, they mention that there is no social security. The day a truck driver is not able to henceforth drive a truck for whatever reason, physical, old age or whatever, he has no social security or retirement benefits. He will be fending for himself. Thus, as long as he is working and driving a truck, he has a livelihood. The day he stops driving, he has none. They also said that they are meted out extremely shabby treatment by authorities, even at a time when they are bribing them. They said very insulting language is used by the RTO authorities, by the flying squads, by the police, etc., and that they all take bribes from them. They further said that they face a lot of extortion by local gangs, informal gangs and organizations who are out to take money from them for some reason or the other. And 84% of the drivers said that they would not recommend any of their relatives to take up the profession or activity that they are in. In terms of numbers, the survey says that about 47,852 crores are paid by way of bribes by these truck drivers and trucking organizations every year to a combination of various authorities. This figure used to be 22,000 crores in 2007. It has now risen to 47,852 crores. And very understandable, since 2007 to now, the size of the economy has multiplied, the number of roads have shot up significantly, and also is the case with the number of trucks on the roads. Thus, the annual bribes paid by truck drivers and trucking organizations to various authorities is a huge 47,852 crores. And the truck drivers in India face such a pitiable and distressing situation despite the fact that GST is supposed to have made India one borderless entity, borderless territory, such that the number of checks by various authorities on movement of trucks are supposed to be lower. The onset of GST has certainly not reduced the incidence of corruption on truck drivers on the road. This kind of situation is there despite the Prime Minister's declared war on corruption. Corruption remains unabated. The survey says that for a truck driving between Kolkata to Chennai, on an average, almost 1600 rupees is paid by way of bribes per trip. This situation remains of joblessness despite the flagship Make in India program of the Prime Minister, wherein jobs were to be provided. And for want of jobs, truck drivers have no alternates. And the situation remains challenging despite the government's claims that ease of doing business has improved. Because if it had improved, the plight of truck drivers would also have improved. If you look at the pathetic situation of a truck driver and compare it with that of a small scale entrepreneur, an MSME entrepreneur, it is virtually almost on similar situations. A small scale entrepreneur who is on his own today earns paltry profits. The truck driver gets a paltry salary. Here he gets paltry profits or no profits at all, perhaps, not just because of the slowdown in the economy that we are facing, but also because of the poor ease of doing business that is there in the country. A small entrepreneur very often would not mind closing down his entity and going into a job, but for lack of jobs, he gets none. A small entrepreneur who's not able to save money and provide for his retirement benefits, he also has got no social security, and the day he closes down his business or activity, he will be in a similar situation like a truck driver, no livelihood whatsoever. And like in the case of a truck driver, a small entrepreneur also is in a situation where he deals with insensitive babus, authorities and organizations, despite the fact that a large amount of bribes are paid by them. And of course, they also face extortion by all kinds of local gangs and gundas down the lane. I'm sure, like a truck driver, a small entrepreneur would not recommend his family members to become a small entrepreneur like him, and would probably say it is better to get very educated and get a well-paying job rather than running a small enterprise on your own and being at the mercy of the entire environment. According to us, an MSME entrepreneur faces even more difficulties than a truck driver faces, and they are to do with the present situation where we have huge number of laws, a large number of authorities and huge compliance costs. Thus, a small entrepreneur faces a larger amount of corruption, because of which he faces contingent liabilities, as we call. He had never budgeted in his profits that he would be paying bribes, and one day he has to be paying bribes and his profits disappear to that extent. He faces heavy compliance costs, and very often, because he is not able to engage the services of a qualified consultant, he faces penalties, penal action and sometimes even prosecution. We all know business tax laws today have been increasingly criminalized, and the small entrepreneur even faces that. The small entrepreneur does not even get bank loans to be able to tide over his business difficulties or to fund his business. The fact today is that with the receding economic growth in India, with increasing joblessness and little consumer spending, MSME enterprises are also facing a situation of a receding business. They would want to get into alternates, but where are the jobs for them? Joblessness has been rising. There is little alternate available to them today than continue what they are doing, hoping that things will improve at some point of time. Thus, they are actually running their enterprises with hope as a strategy. The reality is they face an oppressive environment, an environment where they fight the elements, where the system itself is their biggest predator, and as part of that relationship of being a predator, they end up paying huge bribes to the system. We really don't have the figures in respect of what is the aggregate bribes that MSME enterprises in India pay in totality, unlike in the case of truck drivers and trucking organizations as we just discussed. But the figure is bound to be much, much higher. They face far more number of authorities than a truck driver faces, and the stakes for them are much higher. The reality is that for India, survival of MSMEs, their prosperity, there is a lot of stake for India in that as far as MSMEs are concerned. They are the ones who give a huge contribution to India's GDP. About 28% of India's GDP comes from them. 40% of India's manufacturing exports come from them, and they are considered to be the biggest job provider after the agri sector. And this very sector, according to us, is suffering the most. They are suffering the most because of a system which has been extremely indifferent to them and which is there to victimize them as and when they want, only because their voices are muted. Thus, like in the case of truck drivers, where 84% say that they would not want their relatives to become truck drivers, we are very sure a majority of MSME entrepreneurs would also say that they would not want their family to follow their footsteps and would rather ensure that they have better jobs which give them security, of social benefits and retirement benefits, and they are not fighting the elements as they do at the moment. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.